Thank you for tuning in. Listen to SynthWorld. This is DJ Nomad. I am super excited to be here with Chillsynth artist Chris Tsagakis, aka Decisive Koala. Hope I got that right. Chris, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Of course, excited to have you, especially now, hot off a new release, and going into a new year. So before we kind of dive into it, I just want to get your feelings. It's going into 2025. How are you feeling?
Good. I was trying to get this album out last year, but it was, it's hard to get things done on any kind of schedule. And then I was working with Stratford Cord, who do the release the vinyl, so you coordinate everything with them. And it ended up to where it was going to be released in January, which I'm always a little bit, I don't know for sure how it's going to be. Like early year releases sometimes can be hit or miss. So the fact that it was like well received was like really awesome. Like I was honestly like just really blown away by how much people were liking it. So I'm glad it was, being listened to.
Yeah, going into the year on a good note. And as you kind of mentioned, starting early year releases are very hit and miss coming out of the holiday season. So
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear it's well received. I know my performing partner Noah loves it, got it on vinyl. So
nice.
next time I
That's
go,
awesome.
yeah, oh yeah, next time I go over to his place to jam, we'll definitely be listening to it. So uh,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, so let's dive in. I want to get a little bit of like background with you, and then we can dive into that album. But I looked at your Bandcamp. I couldn't find info elsewhere, I don't believe. Says you're located in Long Beach, California. Is that accurate still?
I'm in San Diego now.
Oh,
I've some of my like profiles and different things are say Long Beach and some say San Diego. I live in San Diego for the last 5 years.
very cool. Yeah, and I've heard great things about San Diego as well. So is Long Beach where you grew up, or are you from like a smaller town in California?
I went to high school in Los Alamitos, which is about 5 miles from Long Beach, and like like a lot of I moved around a lot, but all the towns were kind of like in that area of Long Beach is kind of like the biggest coastal city in the area of where I lived, so it was like it's kind of the home base. Like we ended up kind of in Long Beach all the time for one reason or another, and lots of friends in Long Beach, and then eventually everybody I knew eventually moved there when they were adults, so it was kind of like the place, kind of the central location of that, LA Orange County borderline area. So
Absolutely love California, so certainly send my love that way. But it sounds like you have a history and a past in music, so I kind of want to dig at that as well to get to your past. So, do you remember, like, we can talk about what you do or what you've done before this project, but do you remember like going even beyond that, the first time that you had like a really deeper, connection or moment with music, if you will?
I think electronic music was the first like my music, at the time it's like I just assumed all electronic music was just like like dance music, like EDM type, kind of just boring, straightforward, electronic dance music. And I heard this album Insides by Orbital, and it was like super creative, like super melodic. It was like full orchestras and samples, and it was crazy, and it kind of blew my mind. And like from there it's like I started talking to people more and got into bands like Massive Attack and Portishead. But for the most part, it was just finding all this stuff that really like kind of created this like thirst to find more of that kind of music.
Yeah, that's interesting. So going back to that kind of that beginning of that time, were you in a band? And I know that you play drums. So like, how did you get into music production, kind of just generally? And then what, if you can recall, what was your first DAW that you used?
Played in several bands as a drummer, and I still do. But at some point, like I just decided, because I think electronic music was one of those things that was to me like it just felt like unattainable. Like I can't really like do that because there's so much that goes into it. Because you're not just a drummer or a synth player or a guitarist or singer, whatever. You're everything. And so I just kind of like put it off for a long time, thinking like I can't do that. And then eventually somebody got me a an old M box by DigiDesign, which was like Pro Tools, one of the first old school DAW like interfaces. And I was just like, okay, cool, like I'll see if I can do this thing on my own, and in my house and just make some music. And the first synth that I bought was a Casio CZ1000 in like 2012, I think. And I was like, I bought this one synth. I think I found it for like $110 on eBay or something. And like the second I plugged it in and started playing it, like I loved it. It was like amazing. And it's not an amazing synth. It's a cheap synth, but it's like it's a cool sounding synth. Like it sounds very 80s. And I was just like super stoked on it. Yeah, and then at some point, like I got to a point where I started like getting something that I liked, and I'm not even sure like what it was. I mean, I think maybe it was just finding new inspiration. I mean, actually, I think it was probably like when I started to discover like synthwave and stuff, and discovered like calm trues, and I decided to be a little more focused on like what I was trying to create. And I started a few projects and started putting
After discussing his entrance into the electronic music scene, we touch on a few of the influential artists that catalyzed his prominent Chillsynth moniker.
I always like to try and figure out what kind of opened that door for people. And I know you mentioned Trues, which is a lot the person for a lot of people was for me.
yeah
Would you say he was the guy who kind of opened that door, or did you hear someone else like home before that, or?
resonance home resonance is like the other big one. I found that a little later. Like it was really like synthwave that caught my eye first. And I think it was so I was like Tycho. I found Tycho in like around that same time that I bought my first synth around 2012. And like Tycho like blew my mind and loved, but I still love everything he does because he is associated with Comtrues, like they're on the same label and they played some shows together. At some point YouTube like suggested some Comtrues videos to me, and it was I think it was the propagation video. I think it's called propagation. Really weird, really cool video. So like a lot of the stuff that I was doing when I was just tinkering was very like 80s sounding. And like part of the reason that I never like decided to pursue any of it is because I was just like nobody's gonna like this. Like nobody's gonna listen to some weird like 80s rehash music. Like that's just stupid. Nobody's gonna like that. And then heard Come Trues and I was just like, holy. So it kind of like kicked me into gear, and I wrote an album. I wrote an album under the name Tsagakis, which is just it's what people called me in high school. And I think that was like 2018 or 2017 or something. And that was kind of just like I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna write like just like a little EP of all like these like 80s synths sounding music.
Do you remember like what the next couple steps that led you towards like what your sound has been a little bit more, which is like kind of chill synth, if you will?
I started just like finding artists and just doing the like I don't know, what do you call it? The like playlists where it just Spotify just auto generates, based on an artist. And I do remember that like Admo popped up a lot and caught my attention. I think Admo was like the first artist that to me, like from the chill synth scene, even though like I know he kind of branches out like all over the place, but he kind of started the whole chill synth thing. And like he his songs would pop up here and there. And then I started to also hear like Voyage and Unfound. I think those and Four Hill, like some of those artists that were kind of like blowing up, or not fully blowing, but getting more popular at that time, were getting kind of just introduced into my feed. And like I didn't even necessarily notice that there was a difference, because I think at that time it's like it was to me it was kind of all part of the same genre. And then I think I found I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of Stratford Court's like earliest compilations that they released. And I listened to that and it was like mind blowing. Like I realized like when I found Stratford, like I realized there's like a whole genre. Like once I found like chill synth, it was just like I like every like almost every artist that I find. Like it's like that is actually like a more focused version of like this kind of like broader music that was really like speaking to me.
That's a perfect little segue into Decisive Koala, right? How did
Mhm.
that, so when did that start? I know your first release, I believe, was 2020, but how did you come up with the name and when did you, really, like dive head, head first into that?
So it all kind of like ties in the name and the project and everything. Like I at the time, so I started with that project called Tsagakis, and then I started another project called Sunset Prototype, and then
That
another
was
project.
you?
What's that?
Sunset Prototypes, you?
Yeah,
That's awesome. I've
I
used
know.
that as an example of artists that like pop up and throw out something awesome and then they just disappear forever.
Yeah, I mean it started like I was doing it and it started to get some traction, and then it just died out of nowhere, and I don't know why. Like I don't know if like the algorithm changed. I don't know if like I don't know. I don't know what happened. It just died. And I released, a few songs after that. They didn't like go anywhere. But I was always working on several projects. I also had another project called Board Sports and another project called Hot Pink Hexagon. And they're all just various electronics, somewhere between like synthwave and like Boards of Canada and anything in between.
Hmm.
Just and so those, but all of those projects, like I put like a ton of work into. Like I was like, I'm gonna create an aesthetic, like think of the name, like put a lot of thought into like everything around it, like like a lot of work into the production and the promotion and like posting on all platforms and just doing everything, like do a you know, full like campaign to like push these things, because around that time in the late 2000s, it was like it was seeming very apparent that like anyone who was willing to put in like the work and actually make something that's professional and like is well done and is hitting across all platforms, like you can get your sound out there. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get serious. I'm going to make these projects and try and like actually like do them for real. And so Decisive Koala started out as just, it was my like venting project, or I like to call it my like my garbage, my throwaway project, because it was just like I was making these beats and I was making them with this app called the Koala app, which is a sampler app you can download on your phone. It's free. It's a really cool app, but it's based on the Roland SB404 roughly, where it's just like a sampler. And so I was just making all these like beats with this sampler on my phone, and so I just thought of a name, since I was using the Koala sampler. I was like, Koala, and I just thought like Decisive because I thought that might be a weird juxtaposition with, how like relaxed and easygoing koalas are or something. I don't know. I eventually, somebody told me about the Chillsynth Discord server, so I joined that, and when I joined, I met Peregrine and Mr. Serpent, which they were both artists at the time. I'm not sure how much what either of them do anymore, but they both used this app called Oxy, and they were like, "Oh, Decisive Koala, is that an Oxy name?" And I was like, "What's Oxy?" You know? And so they sent me the app, and it's like a whole DAW in a phone app. Like it's like full everything. It's like
Oh, cool.
multi-track synths, drums, effects, mastering, like everything. You can create a whole song and export it and go straight to SoundCloud and everything. And so once I found that, like I decided to start going more serious with Decisive Koala, because I was just using a sampler and it was just making weird little beats. So I made a few songs on Oxy and posted them in the Chillsynth server, and they like did way better than like any of the projects I had done before. Like all the Sunset Prototype and all
After
those other
detailing the humble
projects, like
origins of his
posted them on
moniker,
Oxy
Decisive
sites,
Koala,
and they were.
we touch on his love for nature and how it freshens his palate.
I live in Southern California. I live like about half hour from the beach. I've been surfing since I was like 5 years old,
Ooh.
and like I feel like some of my like best songs are written when I go surf in the morning and then I come back and write. It's like it like clears my head. I think also like I live like where I live, there's also like nature and hiking areas. So it's like stuff like that, like clearing my mind, like getting, I don't know, like as like cheesy and hippie as it sounds, like being in nature and like sort of clearing like clearing your head and like feeling like energy like is kind of what really like brings ideas into my head.
Is there anything that you can think of that you feel like, and it's okay if the answer is no, but I'm just curious, is there anything you can think of that you think makes your production process unique?
So one of the things that I do, like I've released two albums with Stratford that I didn't put on onto streaming services except for a couple songs. And they're called the DK exclusive albums. So they
Hmm.
were just released on tape and on Bandcamp. And they're kind of like the very like stripped down core of like the way that I work, which is like again coming from like a drummer background, like I really like the idea of creating music like in the moment. Like when you play with like a band, you know, you're not like sitting there like drawing out the plans for a song. I mean, maybe some people do, but a lot of bands don't. Like it's like you kind of just jam, you kind of like create something and see where it goes. And that feeling, like I like that feeling. So like I do a lot of music creation where I have like all of my synths like hooked up to a mixer, and I have a synth that's called the Roland JDXI, which I don't actually use the sounds from it that much. It's more just like the brain because it has four separate MIDI track outs. So you can control four separate synthesizers with it. And then I have a drum machine that also can run off of the CC like signal click. So everything can be running on the same tempo. So you just hit play and everything plays at once.
Hmm.
So like I do a lot of songwriting in that way where like that's kind of my ultimate goal for writing music is like I want to hit play and the beat is going. And so then I just, you know, write a bass line and I go over a different synth and I write, you know, the chords, and I go to a different synth and I write, you know, a lead line, another one writes some like plucks and like just kind of create all these things, and I can do them all in real time. And if I don't like how something, you know, I realize, oh, you know, once everything's all in there, I don't actually like that bass line. I just erase it and the whole thing just keeps playing in a loop. And so I can just erase it and then write a different bass line, you know, move notes around like as it's going. It's kind of like it's going, so I can be the listener while also being the producer.
So what are some of your favorite, give me like at least your first or second, first two favorite scents of all time, and then what's your feeling on, I'm gonna guess you're probably more analog, but what's your feeling on analog versus VST?
My like sort of like workhorse synth is the sequential take five. I think it's a great synth. Like it's nice and like warm and analog sounding, even though it is a modern synth, but it's very, very capable. And I use it like for multiple things on everything. But I think if I had to pick another one, it would be the Roland JX3P, just because it like is so perfectly, like it just has such a mellow sound. Like it's, I don't know, it's just like butter. It's like nothing sounds that smooth and warm and beautiful. I mean, I assume because it is a similar architecture to like the Junos that it's similar to that, but it is one of my favorite synths. I mean, those two I think I use on pretty much everything.
Real quick, top three Chillsynth, not your own, Chillsynth albums, EPs, right? Like,
Hmm. Like a couple albums that like in the very beginning that I feel like were huge albums for me and that I still listen to. One is Pacific by Hotel Pools. I feel like that album is just so classic. I have it on vinyl and it's just like I can put it on and it's just instant relaxation. Anomaly by Unfound. Like I feel like Unfound is one of those artists I was mentioning earlier that was like one of the first artists that I found, and that album was one of the first albums where like I was just like blown away. Like I didn't know that anybody made music like that. It was like really cool. In more recent years, though, Vector Feels by Pastel Graphics. I This is an album that I like recommend to like anybody who like ever asks for like chill synth or like wants to hear like the music that I'm into. Like his stuff is so sick. Like I'm like like I recommend him as like to like anyone who likes electronic music at all. Like I feel like he has like some of the best in the like chill synth realm, and it's like super unique. Like everything that is pastel graphics.
After listing his top 3 Chillsynth albums, we discuss nostalgia-inducing media from the 80s and 90s.
Favorite like piece of 80s or 90s, media nostalgia for you that like, yeah, your just heart connects to.
The movie Point Break.
Ooh, yes, great one.
I think I was like 12 when it came out or something, and my parents shouldn't have let me see it. But
Yeah.
my dad surfed. He taught us to surf, so he was just like, "I'm taking this movie because it's about surfers." But like it's a terrible movie. Like I mean, it's terrible, but it's awesome. Like it's everything at once. Like it's an action movie, and I've never had a tremendous amount of respect for action movies, but it's just done in such a way, like it has such a feel. Like there's like it almost feels like the action movie cheesiness is like ironic, but at the same time it's like deep, but also like has this just overall like chill vibe, even though it's like people like shooting each other and stuff. Like I don't know, it's just a great movie. Okay Computer was one of those albums that like I feel like changed everything. Like I remember the like grunge scene that everybody thought was like this like revolutionary like change in like music and everything, and then I feel like OK Computer was an album that just like smashed it down and said like we're done with like aggressive rock music, and like we need something that's more like intellectual and like deep and like you know limitlessly artistic. And so I feel like that moment is something that like sticks with me.
Yeah, the 90s had a really cool energy to it that I love that artists like Noah, my partner, and others are like kind of getting into more, which I think is
Mhm.
part of maybe that lightning rod I'm talking about, which is like kind of, there's so much of embracing 80s nostalgia and 80s sounds and stuff, which I love. I mean, I'm not going against that at all, bread and butter, but I think we've decided to expand it into the 90s as well, as far as like what we play.
Yeah,
There are artists kind of doing the same thing. How do you feel like you knew you had a great idea for a concept album, or would you give advice on that?
I've done like some collabs with Division Street, and like I love he's an awesome artist. Like um but like we've actually talked a lot about like the ideas of like how you create music. Like he likes to put up like full like mood board type stuff, like visuals and stuff, to like keep him like focused on like a concept. Like I think like I like that idea of, I feel like almost everything that I start writing is meant to be a concept album, but it just doesn't end up being that way. And once I found the Weather Channel stuff, like it kind of like blew my mind because it was always on somewhere, but you didn't notice it. Like for me, it's like my grandparents would have it on, like when we went to their house, or like
Yeah.
when we were like before, like having the weather on your phone was a thing. Like my parents, if we were traveling, they would put it on in the morning while we were like getting ready to go, so that you knew what you were in for. And like it was something you ran into, but you didn't actually like, you weren't listening to the music and saying, oh, this is a cool beat. Like you weren't paying attention. So like hearing it was both like nostalgic and like brought back these kind of like really like visceral memories of like childhood, but also I was able to like pay attention to like this is kind of like cool, like somebody actually spent time on this. And I found this website called TWC Classics, which is just the Weather Channel, and this person who collects tons of information on the Weather Channel, and all these people who were writing music for the Weather Channel, like they actually were professional musicians. They have like albums and a whole body of work,
Yeah, yeah.
and it kind of just I don't know, the whole thing just felt like right, like it felt like so cool because it fell in line too with what I've been doing anyway, that it's all like very like relaxing, like chill, kind of just I don't know, just chill vibe music. Like it fits into like kind of like what I've been trying to do anyway. And so I bought a Roland JV 1080 because that is one of the was I guess one of the most used synthesizers in like the early 90s. And as soon as I plugged it in, I just like started making sounds with it, and songs just started coming. Like it was like so like to get to the whole concept album thing, like I've tried this before where I like had a few songs where I like here's a concept that I want to go for and that I'm feeling at the moment. At the moment I was like, okay, like I'm feeling this Weather Channel vibe. So I got the synth.
And just so our listeners know, um, uh, yeah, I feel like I should have mentioned first. Chris has just released, I would say probably one of the best concept albums I've heard in a while. And I mean
Thank
that
you.
it's phenomenal. It's called 73 Degrees and Sunny. Speaking of 73 Degrees and Sunny, every song has its place. There's nothing there that really doesn't need to be there, doesn't deserve to be there, and there's no filler tracks and stuff like that. And that's hard to do. I mean that in the most complicated way. That is difficult to do. Even artists that are seasoned and make great music, right? So, again, hats off to you on that. I agree
Yeah,
with your assessment, and I think it'll stand the test of time. Um,
hope so.
I believe it will. And I want to ask you a couple, like I got three specific kind of 73 and Sunny sound questions I want to ask you about.
Mhm.
How did you just as quickly as you can or whatever summarize how you made these sounds? So there's variations of it, but those guitar plucks, those like
Okay.
really iconic guitar plucks, right? That might be one of the most iconic sounds from that
Yeah.
palette. Jungle flute style sounds. I got to hear that one. Those are my favorite sounds. And then Noah wanted me to ask you about, and I was curious anyway, barometric pressure, just like what you used for that track. It was so like Boards of Canada. It had like a plucky, like it sounded like you were doing something with your guitar pluck sound you'd made previously, down dropping the key or something like that, and down tempoing it or something. But anyway, those three sounds. How did you make them?
Like the guitar plucky sounds and the flute sounds, like those are all just stock sounds on the JV 1080. And
Yeah.
then like barometric pressure was that one is, I mean, it's just the same, it's all the same sounds, it's all JV 1080. I think for that one, because it has that very big spatial sound, there's this plugin called the RC20, and it's a really really cool plugin. I mean, I think a lot
Moving
of
on from his most recent release, 73 Degrees and Sunny,
it's
we touch on live performances
vintage
as well as what
discovery.
2025 will look like for Decisive Koala.
And I want to know because, God, so much of what you described in your production process is so setting you up for live performances. I want to know, do you have plans for performing live like this year, maybe?
I don't have plans right now. Like I want to. I have done some live stuff. That was in my my just noodling days of like messing around. I didn't wasn't releasing anything. So like I have some experience performing live, but I haven't really figured out how I would perform Decisive Koala songs live.
I want to ask you, I know you just released this album, but we've got the whole rest of 2025 ahead of us. Can the listeners expect any more Decisive Koala this year?
I have like a couple collabs that I'm working on that will be in the next few months. I'm kind of busy with some other projects, non-Decisive Koala related, but I have a ton more like ideas that have been started that I just need to like finish. So there's definitely like I try to get stuff out for summer because I feel like strangely, I feel like I write winter sounding music in the summer and summer sounding music in the winter. Maybe because it's like I'm longing for what I want, but if I if I can get something done before summer, it'll be out in the summer. But there's definitely going to be plenty of singles.
I just want to remind everybody you're listening to SynthWorld on WSLR
Yeah,
LP 1.5 FM Sarasota. This is DJ Nomad, and I'm just chatting with Chillsynth artist Chris Tsagakis, aka Decisive Koala, one of the coolest names in the Chillsynth scene, and really awesome guy. Appreciate your time. It's been great chatting with you. Any final words before we go for the listeners?
thank you everybody for listening. I honestly been doing just for fun. I'm just happy that people are enjoying.
Totally, man. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it. Love the music. Certainly we'll keep playing it on the show. And yeah, again, that was Chris Zagakis, Decisive Koala. Check him out. And until next time, take care, man. Have a good one.
All right, thanks for having me on, man.